Right, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Infrastructure Committee. Recording is operational. So first item is apologies. We've had one apology from Nikki Gleding.
I can't see the chambers if there's a chance to turn that camera on.
Camera's turned up. Who's got that? How's that meeting?
Yeah, all good now.
Thank you. Right, so I'll move that one apology be accepted. Thanks, Cody. That all in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Does anyone have any conflict of interest there? There are no matters lying on the table from previous meetings. Public forum. We've got two public forum speakers today. So first up is Nikki Bust from Arrowtown. Well, to speak about Arrowtown projects. Thanks, Nikki.
Hi, kia ora. Mine's about 3:30, but I'll talk a bit quicker. Kia ora, I'm Nikki from Arrowtown Promotion and Business Association, for those that don't know me. And I'm actually not speaking to any specific agenda topics today, but I did wish to use this opportunity to thank the Infrastructure Committee on prioritising many of Arrowtown projects, but also the current projects that are underway, which I'm going to speak to. I just want to keep them front of mind to ensure that we gain both traction and right solutions for our town. So firstly, the safety intersections, referring to the one at Buckingham and Berkshire by the fire station, the Bakery Corner, and Wiltshire and Hertford, which is a fire station. I know this is underway through the minor improvement funding. And again, after 2.5 years, it's wonderful to see it so close to actually being finalised with some workable solutions to hopefully fix these intersections of their safety concerns. However, I do wish to highlight the Buckingham Berkshire corner, and to highlight the importance of avoiding unnecessary speed bumps on Ramshaw Lane by the Buckingham Street intersection. It does remain the view of the APPA that in light of it not being able to install an exposed aggregate strip at this location to slow down traffic and act as a natural pedestrian crossing, it is our preference is to wait for when hopefully funds become available to meet this requirement rather than proceed with the unnecessary speed bumps. This does not impact the rest of the approved concept drawings, it is just those speed bumps. We also remain hopeful that the work, which is scheduled to be commenced before the end of this financial year, is locked in for outside peak periods, which is predominantly autumn festival, Easter and school holidays, which basically does mean just don't do it in April, guys. We are advised in advance, to ensure that heads up to our community. On this, I wish to remind the Infrastructure Committee that our town's preference, residents and the business community, is to see Buckingham Street as a shared space. Sooner rather than later, as we continue to see the challenges with the tourists and cars intermixing and the damage to our shop facades continue. And it is feedback we are now receiving daily from our visitors. Our member survey is currently open, and like AVA, we've asked for support on this with one of our questions. And we will be reporting that back to our council when it closes, and it will also be in our LTP submission. Also, Butler's Wall, thank you at the last infrastructure meeting to choosing to rebuild and protect this and go down the protect route. Despite understanding the many challenges this now brings, we thank you for progressing on this and opportunities to mitigate it with exploring a one-way option down sooner rather than later to mitigate any further damage on the wall. We do wish to clarify that with this one-way system, alongside no doubt engineering solutions, we do see it requiring the surface on Dudley's precinct brought up to the same standards and surface treatment as Ramshaw Lane, and a robust traffic management plan in place with how to handle the pedestrians and cyclists in what is now an extremely busy Bush Creek Chinese village area. It is noted while closure of the road may be an option being considered, it is important this only happens once the one-way system is in place, and the business on the precincts are in favour of a one-way option versus a closure, just so you know their feedback. Really quickly, also just want to say on the bike parking, thank you to Hugo de Vos in particular for supporting that 2 years worth of work on getting the joint venture of getting 20 bike racks added to Buckingham Street on Arrowtown, replacing initially 3 but eventually 4th car park, is a fantastic positive result for active transport. However, it was incredibly frustrating to see a communication error and annual leave at Downer resulting in the delay from the first installation of early December of which we've paid for them, including over $1,000 on carpet roses, which may sound not a lot, but they've potentially gone to waste. And we are now in late February and we're still waiting for the installation of them. We've made this the best part of summer, including motor tapping. I thank you for your time and opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much. Right, second speaker today is Brian Patrick.
Thanks, Brian.
I just please pass out. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Right. I'd like to read out to you one of the key points from your TDM plan that you're going to be considering today. It says that Frankton Road is of critical significance to the economy and the tourist activity for the district, and is the epicentre of the congestion problem. And there is an objective to get 40% reduction, this is in your plan, in projected traffic on that route by 2033. So it won't surprise you to hear me say that one of the most effective ways you could reduce traffic on Frankton Road and at the same time free up parking in the CBD would be to house your Queenstown staff in offices at Frankton. You would also get a significant mode shift to cycling, because suddenly the workplace would be 7 kilometres from the southern corridor and the eastern corridors. And to me, that's a sweet spot for cycling. And I know that Tony here, I pass him on the track occasionally, but he's not your average cyclist. He's out there training on his way home, and all credit to him. But, 7-9 Ks, that's really what people will do. If you look at page 23 of the report, one of the focus areas in the proposed program involves the development or revalidation of travel plans. Now, you've already got a workplace travel plan, which is this document, and it already considers the travel changes that would be brought about if you move to a Stanley Street location. But staff have so far refused to consider the travel benefits that could be achieved by relocating an office at Frankton, and I've requested this several times. What I've recently learned is that those who prepared the plan have a geospatial assessment of employee home addresses, and that's what it's called. But what it means is that you'd be able to simply plug in a new address and say, how close now are people to that location? What proportion of staff would be closer to their workplace? How many were within cycling distance or walking distance? And how many driving kilometres could be saved by those who still have to use vehicles? Except that people will still have to drive from Arrowtown or from Kingston or from Cromwell, right? But every one of those would save 15 kilometres on a day. The other thing you could learn would be how much workplace travel would be reduced if you had a more central location. And I'm talking here about site visits that building inspectors and planners do. Given that 84% of the growth in population and houses from now to 2053 is projected to be east and south of Middleton Road, the great majority of trips by building inspectors and planners, engineers, will be to those areas because that's where the work's happening. Your housing and building inspectors, planners and engineers, somewhere central like Frankton would save 15 kilometres on 84% of their work trips. I'm also talking about staff visits to Wanaka. Every one of those trips would be reduced by 15 kilometres. So if you do adopt the 3 staff recommendations you've got in front of you today, QLDC is going to be encouraging other organisations to prepare and revalidate their travel plans. So what I'm really asking is for you to lead the way and do that yourself. And the page I handed out, I've given you one with a few highlights, and that's from your climate and your climate action plan. And look, maybe the most important one for today is just the last one I've highlighted, which is you've already got an action there. It's in your plan, it's approved. For you to deliver the actions in the QLDC, it calls it organisational, but it's referring to the workplace travel plan, and continuously review the plan. So that's what you're required to do. All I'm asking you to do is to be a little bit more specific in how you review that. The other things in that thing I've highlighted, really about council's wish to be a learner, a leader, and a measurer who wants to measure success. So what I'm asking you today is measure what might happen, learn from that, and then lead by example and do something. I've given you a page that's just, you've possibly seen it, in red there I've highlighted my recommendation for a 4th recommendation today. Direct officers to update the QLDC workplace travel plan
to show workplace and commuting travel distances and the predicted uptake of active travel options for office locations at Frankton, and allow comparison with the status quo and the proposed Stanley Street office. And I'm sorry, Quentin, I didn't have a copy planned for you, but if you just want to see what I've circulated, I'm happy to send it.
Thank
Thank you,
Brian.
Brian.
Any questions quickly?
Just think, no, it's good through the chair. Yeah, I do take a look this on distances, but also you've got to take into travel time. I know for a fact right now, travelling from Wanaka to Frankton takes longer than travelling from Wanaka to the town centre through the back road. So it's a longer distance, but it's shorter travel time. So you've got to weigh up the cost of time, people's time versus in an electric car. It's not such a big thing. So I do make that. You know, you got to pay. You got to. I understand the idea of a review, but I do make that point.
No, I do understand that, but I think what's key is you've already adopted the climate action plan that says you're going to target lower emissions, and that's how you achieve them, is you go shorter distances, right? Okay. And modern planning would say reduce speed limits, that's what you're doing. That also takes time, but we accept for safety and emissions, we're going to go lower and lower. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Right, so on to confirming the agenda. Resolution is that the agenda be confirmed without addition or alteration. I'll move that if someone wants to second it. Councillor Booth.
Before you put it, just one question. Sorry, I know we went over it in the last meeting, and I'm just reading it again on page 10, the last resolution. We did change. It was about the
This is the minutes we're talking about now.
amend the motion.
Page 10, I think.
No, we're just trying to confirm today's agenda, and then we'll move on to the minutes of the last meeting.
Oh, sorry. I always get that wrong.
That's okay. It's
Okay.
Right, so
We can slow it.
we've got a mover and a seconder. All in favour of confirming the agenda?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, now confirmation of minutes.
Right.
So the resolution is that the minutes of the 23rd of November Obstruction Committee meeting be confirmed as a true and correct record. Councillor Cox.
I was just on page 10. It's just the wording once again. No, we went through it in a bit detail, but number 2 to that resolution, approve the existing budgets are insufficient. Is that approval or just agree that they're insufficient? Oh, that's one word. I'm not too hung up about it. That's just
I don't know if we changed most of our discussion was about that point 3.
it was about 0.3. Yeah.
I'm not sure if we changed that. That's what was written in the original.
Yeah, that was the original one, but we didn't actually change it. I just, I'm not too fussed about it. It's not a biggie. It's just a similar word, but I just sort of read. Anyway, ask
Anyone else have any recollection or comments on that?
And I do remember the request from the community and how we decided was to obviously do it all or not do it. And I guess that was the intention, was to refocus the project into the LTP.
Yeah.
Which they kind of tries to say.
Yeah, I think if that was the way it was worded in the previous agenda,
I'll leave it.
leave it there. I don't think changing that word.
Okay, let's move on.
I can see what you mean though.
It's all right.
So we'll leave it there. Any other comments on the minutes? Quentin wasn't here anyway. Okay. So, well, I'll move that they be accepted as a true and correct record. With a second bit.
Okay.
Councillor Tucker. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. So that takes us on to item 1 on the agenda, the one and only item, travel demand management program. I'd like to invite Adrian and Tony to the table. And reports. All presents in this Adrian Clipper. If you'd like to present the report.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, our report's on a travel demand management program. For context, this program was previously approved in 2021 under the Queenstown Transport Business Case, and funding for delivery of it's been secured with Better Off Fund. At the end of last year, this business case was commissioned in order to turn on the match funding from Waka Kotahi. And the business case has got 4 key pillars of delivery, that being policy, travel planning and behaviour change, wayfinding and travel management associations. So we're seeking approval of the business case so that delivery of the program can commence straight away. So with that, happy to take the paper as read and answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Yep.
Councillor
Well,
Cox.
just a general thing, and I'm having to come back, I'm a bit new to the business case. So the business case is required to get funding from NZTA. And Aberley's produced a business case?
That's correct.
It's just, I raised this on most of the reports we seem to be receiving. It's so long and complex and a lot of repetition in it. I just hope that the consultants aren't thinking that they have to produce long, complex reports with a lot of repetition to justify their money. I'd rather see a short, concise. Now that's a skill, be able to write a report that hones and achieves all the things that a business case has to. So we don't have to spend all weekend trying to plough through, and it is very repetitive. So I just made that comment. I've made it in other reports too, but and I just think going forward we need to, I don't know, if we could tighten up on some of the reports we're receiving. That's a general comment, Mr. Chair. Questions? The down on page 14, it's in the commentary there. I know we're going to get more information on the Wanaka Network Optimisation single stage business case. It says currently being written. Who's writing that?
That's the project I'm leading at the moment, and that is through WSP. Of the consultant.
The question is, when as they're writing it, at what stage do they come and actually try and get some local knowledge to put into it? Because I've seen my previous time on council that there's a lot of local knowledge. I've been there 25 years. Barry Bruce has been a long time. Simon Telfer rides around his bike. I drive trucks through town. I teach people to drive there. I know the town pretty well, and it would be great if we could feed some local knowledge into some of the stuff at an earlier stage rather than being confronted with it later and then having to say, oh, well, why are we doing that type thing? You see what I'm getting at?
I do respond back through the chair. We are just through the strategic case in that business case at this time. We're just going to have to reset our program. We have a number of new affecting factors that we need to, new gateways to go through. We want to make sure we do timely consultation and that we prepare and consult internally, including councillors on that material before we go out. So we just need to reset.
Okay. You keep talking a lot about the dollars, Mr. Review, 1.29 million pre-funding being applied to and there's sort of some talk there that we may need some more funding. And so are we leading up to something for the LTP or what, or how much are we likely to be wanting there? Need to get, getting the best bang for the buck here from that 1.29 million. Have we got any indication that how much more we want?
So the 1.29 million is through the Better Off Fund, which is essentially the local share of funding that we can be match funded. So the total program is around about 2.6 million.
Okay.
And that we've got that mapped out through the business case to deliver that much.
So the match funding is that coming from NZTA? Have we had any update recently on?
We have to get the business case approved before they'll.
Okay.
But I think.
Okay.
If I can offer some more, hopefully, clarity to that one as well. This one is particularly different. Better Off funding. Also, NZTA will treat that as our local share, although we can use it independently, and we've started to do that in the current bike challenge. But it's a condition of NZTA producing their funding assistance rate that we demonstrate we've got local share. We've got an overlap in timings. The Better Off funding runs till 2026. We've asked in our long-term plan for an allocation of money for the travel demand management program on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
So that's yet to be confirmed, but there is ongoing. So it's quite complicated, but there's an opportunity in spending other people's money as quickly as we can.
It's good. Is there any uncertainty with the NZTA money with the change government?
I would suggest that there are a fair amount of uncertainties in how NZTA receive and allocate their funding, but we yet to find out. We're expecting a new the draft GPS as early as this week.
That's a moment. Thanks. Has anybody else got any questions?
We'll go, councillor Ferg first.
Just through the chair, just one question, Tony or Adrian, is, change of government, is that going to have any impact on this or impact of travel or travel demand?
Again, through the chair, we're hoping that this particular project is really supporting a number of the other projects within the wider transport program for ourselves and our partners. So the intervention here is not generally based around large infrastructure. It's really low levels of low cost, low risk, but the outcomes of it can be very beneficial to support public transport, to support active travel, to help us with our parking management. So I think there is an appetite for this line of work, this approach, soft measures, behavioural measures, to support the wider infrastructure. So I think it will be well supported.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, firstly, I think that the principle is well established that we need to, as you say, do soft measures in order to support infrastructure investment and mode shift and the like. Can you just explain to me a couple of things? Sorry, you can just come here. What was the cost of this business case?
Cost on the business case, I don't have the figure in front of me. I think it was around the $153,000.
Okay, so yeah, okay, that's a fair sum regardless. But given the scale of the funding sought, which isn't substantial in the cost in the scheme of transport, so there's different levels to what thresholds required to, seek funding from NZTA and the like. Why was a single stage business case required when the funding sought is only in the low cost, low risk bracket?
And again, through the chair, that was a requirement from NZTA. We did push back at the time of the earlier program business case that the TDM program was ready to go. NZTA, however, required that we complete a full business case to activate their funding. We convinced them that a business case like the smaller, more condensed version was more appropriate, and eventually got them to agree to that. They have subsidised half the cost of the business case. The budget for the whole business case project was agreed at 275 from our own funds, but that is at the normal funding assistance rate with NZTA.
Okay, and so in my time at council, I've seen, I won't say countless, but many business cases that, right from the QUITS program through to the Queenstown business, the public transport case, the mode shift case, the mode shift plan, there's, what does this business case tell us that we didn't already know?
The business case, now it's completed, confirms that the program that we'd identified in the earlier higher level business case work. So the program we already knew, we needed confirmation that it was correct in terms of how our investment partners, NZTA, saw it. We were reasonably comfortable what was in the program already, but as I explained, it was either not go ahead with funding support or complete the business case to move forward. So what does it bring to the table is, again, it's that support for the other projects that we have.
Yeah, okay. And I suppose going back to, look, I understand that this is the game we have to play in order to get funding from NZTA and lever the better off funding and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's unfortunate that I think it's wasteful and unfortunate that the scale of documentation and the and things as such that we need to jump through these hoops in order to achieve these outcomes. Now, TDM is incredibly well understood principle. The challenges of our transport network and the necessity for mode shift are well understood, and this document, fortunately, reaffirms that the cost benefit ratio of investing in this type of stuff is more than there. In fact, it's probably the high. Am I correct in saying it's probably the highest ratio of benefits to costs of any transport program that we've had or project that we've had? Would that be fair to say, Tony?
Yes, that's correct. It's one of the highest benefit cost ratios we've seen.
It's an incredible. It's sort of, if on some of the hard infrastructure projects, we're lucky if we get to 1-to-1, aren't we?
Correct, and that's the minimum bar for investment. $1 spent for a $1 benefit received.
Yeah, and we're at what for this? So I can't remember. It was quite high though.
Thanks, Aaron.
I think the final figure was over 8 for 1.
Yeah, over 8-to-1. So yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is. We've had strong advocacy for the formation of a TMA. I think the utilisation of other organisations like Lightfoot and others to support education and deliver some of these components is also been something that's been suggested and advocated for. I mean, look, I can't argue with the principle that I do find this a cumbersome and wasteful way to get there, but I can't argue with the outcomes and the projects that come out of it. So yeah, thank you for that.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Just a couple of points about things that are in the report. So the table on page 15 is the summary of preferred TDM program. Just a couple of things about it. So the first item there is taxes and levies. Obviously, there's legislation required for any of those to be put in place. And talks about road pricing there. Is there any avenue for, which again I think would require some legislation, for a levy on rental cars? Because I think we have a massive influx of rental cars in our district, which adds to the traffic problems at certain times of the year.
I'm not sure there is a separate levy for the activity of rental cars. Whether rental cars are used would be considered, it would be covered under general road pricing, and if we pursued that.
Yeah, it's wondering whether there's some way of looking at, whether there can be a disincentive for people to rent cars.
From what we understand so far about road pricing, and we're looking at a feasibility project for that as part of the TDM program, is that once you establish what you control, you can you can include or exclude different vehicle types and uses. So there may be a route to that once we get further into that investigation.
Okay. There was also a note there, a point about education programs. Doesn't go into too much detail. It says delivery of complementary cycle and sustainable transport education training. I wonder whether some of that might cover cycle training, I guess, but also whether it can also include training of driver behaviour around cyclists, because that can sometimes be an issue that puts off people changing to an active form of transport. Cycling is the way that they're treated on the road by vehicle drivers. So just, if that can be also part of that education program. I don't know how you do it, but
if I can respond, I mean, it's simple at this time because we're still working out how we procure the various preferred programs within the program, and so adding driver awareness to that education is straightforward at this time.
Yeah. Travel plans. So there's one there that says travel plans for residents. What's meant by that exactly?
So the idea of looking at travel plans in a slightly different way, a wider aspect for residents, community group, businesses, and large organisation, councils, schools. Traditionally, these have been a requirement for schools to provide and voluntary for larger organisations. What we'd like to do is explore further whether there are community travel plans or area-based travel plans. And so we refer to them in various different ways here. Residents could read community. Let's say these are to be refined as we push through.
So is that they require each resident to have a travel plan of some sort? Is it something that the council provides and gives to people and say, these are your options for travelling?
No, it's the intention is to take an area such as Southern Corridor or Ladies Mile and understand the behavioural movements of all the residents there and how we might bring those together.
Right. Okay.
So not an individual requirement.
Because also I noticed for schools, I think the school that our children were at were asked about a travel plan and they didn't really know that they could even have one, or let alone that they would be required to provide one or make one up themselves. So I guess I'm not sure whether the other schools are in the same boat, but whether there's more support available for schools to assist schools with doing that. I mean, they've got enough to do trying to meet the education requirements without other things outside of that. But does it include that kind of support to create a travel plan for each school?
Yes, it does, and that's the idea here. Is I believe there's still a district plan requirement for new schools to provide one, but the older schools may or may not have one. And the idea of this is we start to understand what is out there already and how we may improve those.
Right. Because I noticed there was 50% of schools to have an active travel plan. It's a good time for 100% of schools, I guess, wouldn't it? In preschools as well. Awesome. The other questions I had were, the travel management associations, at the bottom of that table. How do you envisage that they'd be established, supported and funded? And how would people be put on those associations? Would it be voluntary and open to the general public?
Do you answer or me? Okay, the intention is that we investigate the possibility for travel management associations. We have had conversations at the time of previous works with the Chamber of Commerce in Queenstown. We are currently working with a couple of community organisations at the moment. What we need to understand is fully what the ramifications of setting up that partnership. We understand from those providing this work at the moment, they don't want to be seen as controlled by council, but they do want to be independent, but we also want to offer them that opportunity to input directly to and from the conversation around transport. So it's setting up something, it's investigating for us. There's not too many around the world, there's certainly not too many in New Zealand, and so it's something we need to investigate to set up. Bearing in mind, we're very aware of the procurement policies and establishing ties and agreements with organisations outside council.
Item 24 in the report talks about, at the very bottom line, it talks about this report therefore recommends delivery of the TDE preferred program as outlined in points 17 to 19 below. I'm not sure whether that's just a typo, but whether that's item 17 to 19 above, or whether there's some other points 17 to 19 somewhere else, or whether there's other numbers. Can you clarify what that means? It's referring to.
17 to 19 is the preferred program, point 17 to 19.
So further up the page.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, that's fine. And then 27 talks about the stakeholder workshops. I noticed that the Ministry of Education were included in that. What was the extent of that? Do you know? Was this as part of the ABLE report, I guess? And do you know what the extent of the Ministry of Education involvement was? They sometimes seem to have a limited understanding of challenges involved in getting kids to and from school in our district. I'm not sure.
I believe they just attended. We had 2 stakeholder workshops, and I think he just attended the first one, if I recall correctly. But was the idea being that he'd be the conduit into the schools to help with the travel planning and make the schools aware of travel bans. And we've got a different contact now at the ministry to follow up with, so.
Because that's the other question, was were the local schools directly involved in those workshops? Because I think they're a key contributor in my mind. You know, more kids that can arrive to school other than by car. Is, you know, it's also setting things up for the future to be potential. You know, when you've got things like Wakatubu High School, there's a massive amount of bike racks. I think they've been well used this month, but often they're not well used. And they've also got a car park for students' cars, and they're parking in all the streets around as well. It'd be good to see more bike use than car use for high school. And then the last question I think I've got was page 71, the report. Oh yeah, there's one of the little boxes there talks about EV charging strategy. The details, but you know, I guess that's talking more about more high use of electric vehicles or providing charging stations to provide for that. I guess my comment there is that people changing to EVs doesn't actually change the congestion on the road, does it? It's, we want to get people away from cars all around, whether it's electric cars or internal combustion engine cars. Do you know what the intention was behind that part of the report?
I think in general, the discussion around the EV charging for vehicles is that, as you say, there's a scale here. We would rather people walk or cycle. But if they are going to take a vehicle, that we prefer would be more environmental than other options. So we do need to factor that in. We're talking about a behavioural change program. So it may be that there are steps to removing the car use completely. And it may be that there's an environmental benefit from going to an EV rather than some other fuel type in the first case. And then if we can persuade that user to go further, subsequent phases.
Yeah. Okay. And then the only other thing I've got is more of a comment really. It's I guess the general philosophy around trying to encourage active travel, and you know, we've got a lot of work going on with parking at the moment, and we're taking away a lot of parking, and that's, you know, the theory is that people will then use other means of transport, but that seems like a lot of stick and less carrot. Whereas if people, we've got a growing population anyway. We've obviously had a lot of feedback from local, particularly Queenstown retailers and businesses about parking reduction and the difficulty that creates with people getting to accessing businesses. I guess in my mind, we want to do more of the carrot side of things. We're encouraging, providing the infrastructure for people to make those choices to change themselves. So, you know, things like cycleways and improved public transport, those things, to rather than, you know, penalising people for driving, encouraging people not to drive. I guess it's two sides of the same coin, I suppose. Like I say, that's just a general comment. No more questions from me.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, a couple of
Go for it. Yeah.
Just following on from the Travel Management Association comment, I'm not actually 100% sure what they're expecting those associations to do, but one thing we could consider, I guess, is initially anyway, using the community associations, because they've got the local, some of them are actually looking for ways to interact with their community. I'll just put it out there. I'm not sure. There's a question on page 51. It's just really where, you know, we've got this program, and the idea was now implemented, I guess. We talk about to be delivered in-house by QLDC and externally. So my understanding, we've just got one person use it. You'll have to, what? So can you just explain how it goes from here? You know, it gets signed off and approved. What's the next step? What do you do?
We've done quite a bit of work around bundling things up that makes sense to procure together. For example, the policy review is kind of a good example, or the documentation that needs to be reviewed, bundle that up and procure it out. So I don't envision delivering much myself. It would be kind of project managing it all and contracting all these bundles out.
Okay, so just there you've got a list of things when you start talking about, I get really nervous, software development, web development, are we looking at, just for this, you're not using the normal council communication system, or are you looking at something separate?
I'd say there's different tranches, and we're, at the moment, the first ones would be policy, wayfinding, things that are quite easy wins. Some things like, software development, we haven't, we'll kind of work that one out as we get to it, but we'll be following all the QLDC, procedures, procurement.
Okay. My last question was, Chair, is this, that on page 59, we talk about the, I know Quinn mentioned travel to our management plans that are out there, but there's indication that, is this not a common thing in New Zealand yet? Because you've got minimal, it says here on page 59, we've got minimal, lack of evidence of success of a TDM measure. There's minimal evidence of the success of a TDM in New Zealand. This makes it difficult to measure the benefits. So are we going to be one of the first cabs off the rank type thing on this?
We're a real leader in this space, which is quite exciting. There's definitely the bigger councils like Auckland Transport are doing this kind of thing as well, but obviously it's a different scale. The smaller regional ones, not so much. So, well, a lot of them are doing the travel planning, or they're doing bitsy bits, like part of the education, but there's not any real encompassing program like this. So it's a nice opportunity to kind of lead by example, set a new standard for the nationally.
Okay, cool. Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And yeah, I mean, just following from that too, being a leader in that, one of the public forum speakers, Brian Fitzpatrick, mentioned about QLDC as a workplace, taking that leadership role, and I think that's a good point actually. If we can make it work for staff of this organisation, then it's got a chance of working for other, or for the community as a whole, I guess. So that's probably a good place to start, and yeah, as an organisation shows some leadership on it. Good. No other questions or comments?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. Well, just flying on from there. What's the relationship then with the regional councils and the national or the regional land transport plan? I know Quentin sits on that committee, so this is obviously a big, important area. Is it we covered off with our regional council neighbours, or are you looking at Central Otago? Any sort of relationship with them on this?
If I could respond through the chair, yes, through Way to Go, we have Otago Regional Council involved as a partner, not necessarily as an investor in this particular program, but definitely as a partner in our forward thinking. We're just working with them, moving through the approval phases of their public transport business case. That relies on TDM program being in place to support the mode choice to encourage an increase in patronage. So they're very involved in what we're doing. They're very involved in the outcomes. It hasn't been put into their own funding for the Regional Transport Committee in the RLTP, the Regional Land Transport Program, but it is in ours for a long-term plan to then be reflected. There may, depending on how it's bundled, because the different categories in the RLTP for projects less than 2 million, but it will be in there from our long-term plan.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Just to pick up on your point about Brian's question around the civic administration building, what advice or document will we be seeing that considers the travel routes for a civic administration building in the future? Will it be encompassed in this, or will it be a separate piece that follows under the?
If I can answer again through the chair, the work that I initiated earlier was for a QLDC organisation-based travel plan, and the idea was we wanted to understand where our staff were, how they travelled, what the opportunities were. We've still got 4 or 5 offices within Queenstown and elsewhere. And at the time, the project around Project Manawa was being brought forward. So we identified as much as we could of that information, what that would mean if Project Connect, as part of Project Manawa, was activated. We were travelling to 4 or 5 offices in Queenstown as opposed to 1. We saw that is informative to that project, but it doesn't lead that decision. We understand the Manawa project, Project Connect, has a whole range of affecting factors to consider. So when we update our QLDC travel plan, we can identify where our staff are and how they're moving, how we move our internal fleets. But I don't think that will be the highly influencing document on that project. I think that'll be inherent to that project.
Through the chair, there might be something in the recommendation from the hearing panel.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to follow up. There was just talk about the interdependencies with things like public transport and other infrastructure. I mean, it's a really important point to make that there's no doesn't matter how much money and time you invest in travel demand management unless the alternatives are real and practical, i.e. that public transport is regular, reliable, affordable, accessible, that active transport routes are safe and you know, well constructed, that you know, the signage is, you know, appropriate, all the infrastructures, the bus stops, the, you know, the public transport services, you know, we have countless business cases that tell us what we have to do in order to achieve the levels of mode shift that, you know, the 40% mode shift on Frankton Road, and we're a long way behind in terms of providing both the public transport and the infrastructure that's required for those. So while we can ask nicely and we can educate people and we can do all the nice stuff with TDM, until that infrastructure, you know, we've got a lot of that infrastructure and service in place, we are chasing our tail a little bit. I mean, you know, Wanaka's the classic example is you know, mode shift is great, but we don't have public transport. We don't have alternatives in place at the moment. And while we're making inroads into the active transport network, you know, there's a lot more work to be done. So, you know, the alternatives have to be there in order to do that. There's no point just saying you're not allowed to park in town if you don't provide viable alternatives. And yeah, so I think we need to keep that in mind. It doesn't make this any less important, but we need to continue to strive to deliver that stuff, and we're a long way behind.
Thanks. Right, no other comment or discussion, questions, right? Okay, we'll move on to the resolution. Then, that the Infrastructure Committee note the contents of this report, approve the contents of the Queenstown Lakes Travel Demand Management Single Stage Business Case, and 3, direct officers to implement the ongoing travel demand management program in accordance with the high-level themes outlined in the table, which is included in the minutes. I'm going to read the whole thing out. Do we have a mover? Councillor Chaka and a seconder. Second. Any discussion on it? All voting? No. All in favour?
Aye.
Carry. Thank you.
Thanks very much for working on it.
Yeah, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the meeting. I declare the meeting closed.
Yeah, get to work again.
Exactly, thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, the meeting.